Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of A Handful of Hope. I'm so happy and grateful to have Gina Bell with us here today, who is an empowerment guide, author, speaker, workshop host, and the creator of the Tears Tulle Movement. She's author of a women's empowerment picture book called Tears Tulle. Gina uses art, metaphors, and rainbow tulle to help people all over the world remember their color. She loves eating batter straight from the mixing bowl on an old wooden spoon. That's awesome. Playing board games with her family and stealing her husband's comfy socks. She's busy these days writing Tears Taffeta, the story of a boy and his ever-growing multicolored cape. Gina lives outside of Chicago with her wonderful husband and is the mother of 6 amazing kids. Gina, welcome and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
What batter is your favorite batter to eat right off the spoon?
Oh my goodness. Oh no, a question I don't know how to answer. I would say strawberry muffin batter would be my favorite. It's just sweet enough where you could eat the whole bowl if you want to.
I used to be a huge, when I ate cookies and stuff, I used to live for that chocolate chip cookie dough.
Oh yeah.
Or when you make Rice Krispie treats and you put the chocolate on top, it always set aside some extra Rice Krispie treats. So I had Rice Krispie treats available to scrape the chocolate out that couldn't get actually poured out of the bowl. Rather than wash the bowl, I just scrape it out and eat it that way.
Nice. Yes. I remember my mom used to make the chocolate chip bar pans where it was like brownies, but it was actually chocolate chip cookies. Oh, they're so good.
Yeah. Oh. Yes. So many wonderful memories with that. So Gina, you have a really, I've seen pictures of you, your picture you sent over. There's all sorts of colors and whatnot. And I know that from our previous conversation, your kind of origin story of what you're doing now happened, I think, on an overpass in Orlando. Can you tell us a little bit about that story and what transpired for you and where it's led you to today?
Sure. Yeah. I had been wearing like colorful tulle skirts for years. And I can remember a conversation that I had with my mom where she explained to me what tulle was. It's spelled Tulle, and it's like the fabric you see in like brides' veils or on ballerinas. And so I felt a special connection to her when I would wear that fabric. Well, I was on an abandoned overpass in Orlando, Florida. Someone had just gifted me this giant rainbow tulle skirt that was like bigger than I am. And I had paired it with a black tank top. And I thought, wow, this really represents like my tears moments and the colorful tulle parts of life. And it was at a time where things were not going perfect for me. I'd flown down to Orlando. We were taking pictures. But I found out my husband was going to have brain surgery when I got home. He's great now. It was the anniversary of my mom's passing. There was just a lot of things that were going on in my head at the same time. And someone said, "Hey, Gina, can you run in that thing?" And I fluffed the tulle up all around my body. And I was in my bare feet. And I just took off down this overpass. And it was like for just a moment in time, I was allowing myself to be in this colorful space at the same time I was in this painful place. And I thought, wow, the skirt kind of felt like it almost gave me permission to take up more space in the world and sort of stand in that kind of good power and that good vulnerability. And so, yeah, everything changed from that moment. I had no idea it was coming.
Yeah. It's almost like, Gina, it sounds like you like broke free or broke through to something. You broke free from something or you broke through to something else.
Yeah, I would say so when I was growing up, my mom had this manuscript, a book manuscript in the pajama drawer of her nightstand. And I would sneak in there when I was a kid and page through it and look, but she never had it published or sent it to a publishing house even. It stayed in the pajama drawer. And she had some fears, I think, around bringing it out into the world. And so I kind of felt like in that moment on the overpass, not only was I like running towards my dreams in a way with my mom's energy, but it was like every ancestor that came before me was like in that space with me, anyone who couldn't go out with all their full color or couldn't stand and take up space in the way that they might have hoped to. So yeah, it was kind of a life-changing moment for me, for sure.
When you talk about people remembering their color, what does that mean?
Oh my gosh. So I say that I think we're all born with like these invisible, colorful skirts and capes and however you want to look at it, but that we're born with like this extraordinary color. And as we grow older, without even meaning to, I think that we hear the advice of others, or we hear what other people might think or want for us. And so without really meaning to, we sort of lean into that energy. And I think that, wow, just connecting with that early color again as adults can be so powerful and so, soul nourishing if we make the space to do it.
How do you help guide people to do that? Because it seems like there's this, the inner color, the inner child, whatever it is for people. And I see it all the time with people. There's such this desire to come out and play, to be free, to be able to allow themselves to run across the overpass. And we don't, because of what we think we're supposed to do or how we think we're supposed to act or whatever the thousands of different story narrations that go through our mind. But at our very core and essence, there is almost this desire to be free. And if we were just to take that one action that we spend all the time convincing ourselves we shouldn't, it would be so transformative of our life. If we were to skip instead of walk, if we were to, jump instead of amble, whatever that might be for us. How do you empower people to begin to take those steps, to begin to step into their full brightness of their colors?
So I do have to say that in the Tears Tulle book, the moves that the girl in the story does to reconnect with her color is she pauses in the moment, and then she skips and she dances and she swishes and she twirls and she remembers the spirit of that magical girl. So it's so crazy that you gave those examples right now, because I think it activates something in our brains when we do things differently than we normally do. When we pull away from the distractions of life and we, just take a few moments to reconnect. I did a book signing over the weekend, and people were walking by my table. It was at this big, this event, and here I am masked and signing copies of Tears Tulle, and people would walk by and just kind of look with these curious eyes and flip through the pages and then kind of back away and walk away, and it's like in that moment, I feel like they're remembering something, they're feeling something inside of them. And it's the best thing when someone walks back after having one of those moments. But I do think we really need to pause. We're just bombarded with so much stuff, and it's so easy for me to get distracted by social media or whatever else might be going on and not take the time to really connect with that color. So
when people do walk by and they come back, what do they say? What is it that draws them back?
I think that's a great question. What is it that draws them back? Well, it might be that there's a grown woman in a tutu, first of all, standing at the book signing table. So that might be part of it. They're curious. But I think that when they come and they look at the story, and it's about this woman, and one of the pages in the book is she watered her dreams with her tears. Like she's, watering these dreams. And there's this illustration where these flowers are growing up from, like her stomach area here. And I think that a lot of the times we don't give ourselves like the space. We live in like the social media perfection kind of world. And so many of us are hurting or we have real struggles. And I think that's why Tears and Tulle is so important. It was like a story I would have wanted to hear as a kid, to know that, yeah, I'm going to have failures or perceived failures, that'll be these stepping stones in a way, and that it's okay to, have both going on in my life, and that I can move forward and connect with my magic from within those darker places, like that lotus growing through the mud.
Do you find
If that
that?
makes sense.
Yeah. Do you find that it's interesting because with social media as a medium of expression, do you find that it, in some ways, like at least my experience has been, it almost seems like it gives us all this megaphone, but it almost, it seems like it serves as a magnifier of suppression, in the sense of now we just have more people to qualify and evaluate ourselves to and against. We have more cars that we can see, more homes that we can see, more vacations that we're not taking, more jobs that we're not this, more, income that you're not earning, whatever it is. And whereas before we were only comparing ourselves against our neighbors and the people we'd grown up with or we knew in our immediate proximity, now we literally have the power to compare ourselves to the world. And I'm just curious, do you observe this too with it? Do you see it? It's interesting. Like, we have these vehicles of expression, but they almost are become vehicles of depression in some ways too.
Yeah, I definitely I'm in the same boat with you on that one. I've been trying, this is my plan, is to, post the fun, colorful pictures. And then I'm wanting to begin to post the outtakes, the things that didn't go right during a photo shoot or, during a speaking gig or something like that, to have like the tears and the Tulle, because that's what I'm talking about, and I could so easily get sucked into comparing myself with others. And what I try to remember is, I think the people I'm comparing myself to are also comparing themselves to others. So there's like, we're all comparing ourselves
Yeah.
to people, comparing ourselves to other people. So yeah, I have kids, they're 17 to 23 years old. And yeah, it's a social media world out there. And I think just trying to stay with who we really are is just super important.
Do you see a big difference? I mean, 17 to 23, I guess that's not too big of an age gap, but it's enough. Do you see a difference in how social media has impacted the 23-year-old versus the 17-year-old?
Wow. My daughter called yesterday and she said, Zach called me an old lady. So that's the 17-year-old one. And she'll be 22 for her golden birthday next weekend. So Zach and Izzy, but she said, he said something was smelly. And I said, what smells bad? And it was just a term they're using now, but she had no clue. But yeah, there's definitely an age, a difference there. And as far as social media goes, I don't know. I think that sometimes the kids that are growing up with it more, like if they're being exposed to more and there's more kinds of social media, I have mixed feelings about this. So yeah, I think there's a definite difference. Ooh, you caught me off guard with this question. I'm like thinking of all of them and the different places they're at in the world. And I don't know, I think it can be such a blessing. And as they get older, the older ones are using social media for good, if that makes any sense. Not that my younger ones aren't, but it's really inspiring and hopeful for me to see the younger people using social media to do things that empower or are going out in the world or trying to help people. So I think the best thing we could do is probably like set a good example for them so that they, like what you were saying about social media and how this comparison game often happens. Like, I think that if we can set examples and, I don't know, try and live from this place of wisdom, then hopefully the older kids I have are teaching the younger ones something about that, so I'm hopeful.
talk to us about the Tears Tulle book. What was the inspiration behind it? What's the book about? What inspired you to write it?
Yeah, sure. So I think it's a book that I needed as a kid. It's called Tears Tulle. And it was also inspired by the women's empowerment movement, because that follows a real rainbow skirt to the homes of 52 women in 52 weeks. So I think we're on house 43 right now, Skirt Still Traveling. And, these women were sharing stories. They pair the skirt with something black to show their tears and their tulle. And I think their stories really inspired. And then my mother's untold stories and my ancestors, the women who came before me, their untold stories, I think really inspired me to write a book that was different than the books that I saw growing up, and one that I probably needed. And then there's Tears Taffeta, which is a boy's version of that book that's will be out this time next year, that follows a boy and his ever-growing colorful cape. And it's about courage and strength and vulnerability and feelings, and standing in your true self and being okay with that. So yeah, both books have been a labor of love, and I think are so needed in the world right now.
What do you find that there's foundational similarities for folks of what true self is for them?
Oh yes, absolutely. Yes, I do. I kind of feel differently about this question. I think that we can be so influenced growing up that this idea of true self sometimes shifts and morphs into what others want for us. So I think it's a real gift when we can, go inner and, I don't know, through meditation or therapy or whatever works for, and to really connect in that space with our own inner light that isn't so much guided by other people. So I think true self, yes, means different things to different people, but I think there's something really magical when you go deeper than what is expected of you or is planned out.
Yeah, and it's that. I mean, how do people begin to even become aware of that, right? Because I think too, many of us, we grew up in households where, what do they call it? They call it teenage rebellion, at a time when a teenager starts to wake up and maybe they realize that they have different values and belief systems that the family has raised them under. And we call it a phase and say they're just rebelling and they're being rebellious. But are they really? Are they rebelling against you? We personalize it and make it seem like such, but really maybe what they're doing is they're shedding their skin and they're being brave enough to wade into those uncomfortable parts of who they might really be and awakening to what that might be and who that might be. And it's that question of how does one even begin to recognize that that's an opportunity available to them, right? That they have these. I think of the example of it's the don't do that, that's not appropriate, right? And the person, whether it's a child or an adult, they're just expressing whatever is on their heart and mind in that moment. But what we're taught, the feedback we get is what's on our heart and mind is inappropriate in that moment. And so how do we begin to become aware of that there is that other reality out there, one that we really do become aware of and tapped into the true self?
Yeah, I keep thinking about this a lot with my own kids. Like, I'd rather them have, if they go to college, have 10 different majors and, figure it out on their own, figure out where they want to be in the world, than to have someone who's got everything lined up for them. And I was a rebellious kid, so I totally, when you ask that question, I think about like what would I have needed in that moment, as a kid
Mm,
who is rebelling. And for me, it would just be making space for what we perceive a lot of the times as failure. When my daughters went off to college, I sent them with fun fail stick jars, and they were jars where I sliced up all these pieces of paper and sent them with those. And I said, put your fun in here, put your fails in here, and then whatever's fantastic, add that too. But I think it would help when we're younger if, you know, it's not like, oh, what kind of message are you trying to send? Or what, like we hear these things growing up, and it's like, if it's okay to like fall down and get back up, like if that's a little more normalized, that that's part of life and it doesn't mean you have to stay down, you can get right back up and,
yeah.
reconnect with your color, your tool. But I think for me, it would have been needing more space for that kind of thing.
Yeah, it makes you, I guess for me, it makes me wildly curious about, I think that there's such a spotlight on some of the problems that are in the world. And it's a spotlight not necessarily to solve them, but almost to profit off of them, right? Because, the human animal, we innately are attracted to some way to fear and drama and those types of things, because in the emotional blips for many of us who might be kind of like this, it's a bigger blip like this. And it makes me wonder what the world would be like, how many of our problems would literally disappear and be eradicated over a short period of time if we could really focus on identifying what is it that the child, all of us needed, and what do we still need as kids and as big kids. And if we could find a way to societally start supporting and giving that. I often wonder what the world would be like if our news didn't deliver. The news wasn't defined as, death, dying, greed, and corruption, but instead of hope, love, and possibility. What would it be like with that? What would we take away? What would we model instead? And it's such an interesting question with that. Is like, who did we need as a child?
Yes. I have one of the women who wore the skirt. She mentioned setting an example, like that you never know who you're setting an example for. Like it could literally be anyone. And she ended the little essay that she added with her skirt. She ended it with, even if it's your younger self looking back at you in the mirror, and I think that was such a powerful thing to hear. It was very simple, but it was like, yes, here I am setting an example for my children or for people in the world. And my younger self needs that love and that care and that example just as much, to remember her, especially when things are hard.
Gina, we're coming up on our time. Before I ask my final question, where can people find and connect with you online?
Oh yeah, fun. You can go to ginabell.co. There's no M, just ginabell.co. Or you can Google Tears and Tulle and find out all kinds of information about what I'm up to.
Very good. Somebody who picks up your book. So I want to go back to that book signing, and the people walk by, they kind of double take, they see the woman over in the big colorful skirt. They decide to grab a copy of your book. They go home and they read it, either quietly by themselves or they share it with their family. What is your hope that the reader takes away from reading your book?
I'm hoping that she realizes this isn't just a 42-page women's empowerment picture book. It's also got her stories in it. So it would be my hope that she could see her own tears and Tulle from within the pages of that book and connect with her own story from within my story, and continue to read it and grow from that space.
I love that. Everyone, what a beautiful story to rewatch and listen to. Gina started us on a story of her over on the overpass in Orlando and being able to have a moment where she really broke through and took off running barefooted with the big colorful skirt around her body. And it's just such a beautiful image. And I think it's one that can be symbolic for all of us, right? How many times have we wanted to skip, hop, jump, do something different, just allow ourselves to honor the feeling that comes up and express that physically, but so often we won't. We hold it back, we restrict it because we're so terrified and afraid of how we might be judged and who might judge us. But it begs the question of what life could begin to look like if we honored those expressions instead of suppressed them. How much love, joy, happiness, and abundance are we leaving on the table because we're unwilling to express and we're far too quick to depress? Looking at the idea of social media and what does social media enhance, or what does it detract from, about what kind of colors, and to remember that you're all born with tremendous amount of color inside of you. And again, so often in life, we don't get what we need or who we needed as children. And we grow up learning to hide those colors, to darken, to dampen, to hide them away. Where it was bright and colorful, we turned monotone and gray. And what might happen if you added a little color to the palette of your life? If you chose pink instead of gray, if you chose blue and green instead of your traditional white and black, it really begs a beautiful question if we allowed that almost inner rainbow of who we are to start to shine through, what could it look like? I love the idea of coming by and the image of Gina in the bookstore signing and somebody walking by and somebody walking back. It's a beautiful metaphor in the sense of how many times have we passed something or someone that we know we should connect with, or something that draws and perks our curiosity. But again, we'll often hinder and stop ourselves from being unwilling to explore because we think we shouldn't, because we judge ourselves before we allow ourselves to experience. We suppress before we allow ourselves to express. What could happen for you? What could be transformative for you if you just honored those impulses, you honored that feeling, you honored that pull that was going for you, that you reached out and you connected, you said hello, you picked up the book, you picked up the phone, you pushed send, whatever that is for you, and just allowed yourself to honor that whisper that has been whispering for so long, saying, this is for you, this is for you. Gina, this has been such a blessing to share this time with you. Thank you so very much. I will always and forever remember the beautiful image of you running barefoot over the overpass in Orlando. I will think of that when next time I'm in Orlando. And I am just so excited for what's to come for you. Everybody make sure to keep on the look for Gina's next book, which is going to be Tears Taffeta. And Gina, thank you for being here today. This has been such a blessing.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. We will see you next time, everyone, on another edition of A Handful of Hope. Bye-bye.